Welcome, hello ladies and gentlemen, Don Spector here today with another IEM review, and I have for you today an IEM you probably have never heard so far, the Aoshida E20. That's I think a relatively new brand, and I'm still not sure if it is a sub-brand of Let's Sure, no clue, but at least their font and also their general packaging here does seem to be similar. So let's see what you actually get with it. Of course, starting with packaging and accessories. That's a packaging, standard box for the price tag of like 50-ish bucks, definitely on the bigger side, and it feeling very sturdy. Slide it out here, get this off-white color, which is pretty unique. Usually companies just go black or white. And yeah, when you slide that out, which fortunately is easy, and when you would be greeted with the IEM, beneath that the quality control, blah blah blah, and your carrying case, which then brings us to the accessories. Yep, that's the carrying case, and it reminds me of the HC Sound hard mirror. It's kind of sturdy enough, but you can see it's definitely squishing. The zipper is not the mega smoothest, but does generally work fine. And then you get two sets of tips. Let me just quickly get that out. So these are the medium small outlet diameter tips, and these are wide outlet diameter tips that are a bit shorter. And yeah, they are basically the same that you would also get with the Can or with the KVS Quintet. Yep, so those generally work fine, and I would recommend you using the wider, shorter ones when you talk about comfort later. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Of course, we get a cable, but yeah, we take a look at the cable, I would say in the next chapter now. Just quickly throw that out. Don't need this shit no more. Okay, today we start things off with the cable before we come to the IEM. Quality control, you're also out. That's the cable, and for 50 bucks, I can already give you summary, it's pretty good. It's not perfect, it has a few smaller flaws, but for this pricing, I think this is a very good cable, especially because, as you can already see, it generally stays smooth. So it doesn't matter if you squish it together, so it gets smooth again pretty fast, and usually is pretty damn tangle free, which is a huge upgrade over the last cables that I tried at this price region. So I really like that. And yeah, let's start looking at the details. This is the connector, 3.5 smooth aluminum cylinder. There's improvement potential here. Because yeah, you can't really grip that too well. It's pretty damn slippery, and it's also relatively small. So yeah, if you have a new connector or a new DAC, this could be a bit problematic. Above that, a strain release that again is a bit too hard and too short, so it doesn't really release strain. And then the main part here is the 4-core copper cable. And yeah, this is on the thicker side without being too thick. The general waving here has been done, yeah, accurate, and so it totally is fine. And when you come to the splitter, same style as you can see, almost the same size, so at least they follow the trend here. And then the cables on top. Sorry for this cut, firefighters just drove around in front of the house here, and that was audible in video, so I had to make a cut here. So yes, as I was saying, as you can see, the cables on top are about the same thickness, maybe a tiny bit smaller than the cables below. So that also means that this usually stays tangle free enough and stays smooth enough. And the chin slider here is really good implemented, I have to say. It does slide with pressure, so it does stay in place when you have it, but it's not too tight on there, so you can actually just slide it down if you need to or don't want to. And that is what even more premium in quotes IEMs fail sometimes. The chin slider is helpful, and they just fuck that up. So I like to see that here being well implemented. And then we come to the ear hooks. Those are that in here, rubberized, relatively thick, and they still have this texture of the cable here. And I think this is my biggest gripe with this cable, because the bending radius, by not being too small, is still on the smaller side, and this applies pressure on my ear, I think at this part here. And because you have this texture, it kind of gets uncomfortable for me in like maybe 30-40 minutes or so. It gets uncomfortable, and yeah, I don't like that. But if your ear is just medium sized and you're not as sensitive as me, I think you should be fine here. Because yeah, this is not the smallest, not the biggest, it's kind of medium smallish bending radius, I mean here. And then the connector, it uses the same color aluminum shell. We quickly get that in comparison here. And it feels well made here. I have no problems with the connector. And this side here would be the left side. It doesn't have any color. But let me just get the right side in. Yep, this is a nicely placed colored ring around the right side, so everybody should be able to just see where left and right is without looking for the small R indicator here. Easily visible. It's flush 2-pin though, so it won't work for all other IEMs if you like this cable. Probably won't work for the bit recessed ones. But yeah, generally this cable is good. I do like it, and I don't have any complaints with it that are like major kind. As I said, like, the comfort is not the greatest. But if you're not as sensitive as me, because I am sensitive, you should be fine. Okay, then next, let's take a look at the IEM. And I think for this, let me see if I can unplug the cable. Okay, I can't. Yeah, the more newer 2-pin connectors here, yeah, they are so tight, I don't want to damage the IEM, so I rather leave them in. But yeah, this is the IEM, as you can see here, and it does look pretty neat. Like, if I would show you this, I don't think you would guess this is an IEM that clocks in at like 50 bucks. It definitely does look more premium than that, with the metal faceplate, the semi-open design here, and the general like matte black look. And speaking of matte black, I already wrote it in the title, like, this is definitely the better matte black compared to Khan. Khan collected fingerprints more on the matte black. Khan smelled weird. Khan's coating on the actual IEM already was not the greatest out of the box. But this here is just matte black resin, and it's totally fine. Like, in terms of build, this is definitely a step up from Khan overall. Even though, because we have to continue the trend, you can see the nozzle is 3D printed as well, but they just use a better material, so it did not erode the tips I put on here. For instance, I used the ZNAV Fit Max on here, and we talk more about comfort. So those are not eroded in any way, they just stayed exactly fine, as well did the spring tips that I tried on here. So this is definitely a step up from Khan, and yeah, I like this build overall, because the seams around here are super minor, as you can see. Like, it's an almost perfect integration of a metal faceplate on the top. Like, it's really barely noticeable to the finger and generally feels well integrated. The front nozzle though, as I said, is like 3D printed and put on here. But it also seems to be glued on well, and I don't have any problems with it, so it should stay in place just fine. And then, last but not least, the metal mesh out the front here also is glued in well, at least it looks like it, and it hasn't moved in any way when I tried it over the time. But I can't show you because I'm afraid to remove the cable as the connector, but it's also totally fine. Let me see if I can get it a bit out. No, I don't want to damage it. Okay, so okay, the connector here is also fine, no problems there. And then last but not least, the orange accent here in the faceplate is Chaos on protective mesh at the same time. Because this is like semi-open back design, like semi-open back, like we'll come more about that in isolation chapter. But yeah, this is stylish, it looks good, this set, and it does protect the IEM, so it's double purpose here, and I have absolutely no problems. So yes, summary again, overall build quality for the price, really good, among the best I've seen here, and I have really no major complaints, or no really complaints whatsoever. And then let's talk about comfort and fit. With Rogan again measurements, and I will continue to compare to Khan, because also the sound later, like this it is basically, like, it is what Khan should have been, talk more about later. But yeah, this is semi-custom shell. It is on the medium size, not that big, not that small. And the biggest problem I have with this IEM is again the nozzle. Like, let me go to video again here. Yeah, this is again thicker nozzle. It is, I think I noted 6.2 millimeters in diameter at the front. That definitely is too thick for my ear, and I would have liked to see thinner nozzles. Also, the length here is definitely more on the longer side, because the shell itself, as you can see, is also going in your ear a bit more than other semi-custom shapes. And then you still get a like medium length nozzle there. So that means all longer tips didn't work for me at all. Like really longer tips just don't work. Like when this IEM is poking out of my ear like in half a centimeter or so. So that's just not going. But TWS tips like the Zetna Max and the TWS version here did work absolutely fine for me. And I also have another pair that I got with the Neza. Here the velvet tips. Surprisingly, those also work very well for me here. As did, for instance, also the spring tips. But yeah, the trend here is usually if the IEM is more, or if a tip is more for deep insertion and shorter, it did work for me pretty well. And if it's longer, it just didn't. So one of my favorite tips, the liquid silicone tips, just didn't work. It was just too long of an insert and it just poked out too much. So yeah. So yes, in terms of comfort, if you get the right tips for it, it's semi-custom shape. There's no weird angling or no weird edges at the bottom or so. Absolutely works fine. And yeah, as I said, my biggest problem is again the nozzle. And if I would have just shrunken? I don't know what's the English term, right term in English, I have no clue. If I would have just shrunken it to like maybe 5.8 at the widest point, I think it would have been a bit better. But it's not as bad as other IEMs that I looked in the past. And I give it a pass here in terms of comfort. It is not the best, but it's also not the worst. So overall, absolutely okay. And then let's talk about isolation. I think, I said it before, semi-open back design in IEMs is kind of a scam. It's not like semi-open back headphones like the Athena. Generally, if you would use the Athena, it is really more like open when it's closed. So that is indeed semi-open. But this one is not. It's like it actually. It does isolate better than I expected. So compared to the KZ PR2, which again I have here at the moment, that is also semi-open back design with more open. That definitely isolates worse, but still good, decent. This one here isolates pretty damn decently. And I think you should be fine with this IEM in most situations. It did absolutely well for me in the tram, in the office, at home, and even some more busy roads, honestly, were okay. Not the main roads though, so there's a bigger trucks driving on or something like that, and maybe still train nearby. It's not exactly good enough for that. But I think if you get a pair of foam tips on, it might even be fine for this. And yeah, it isolates pretty well overall, and I didn't have any problems with the isolating factors here. Next, let's talk about drivability. And yep, the E20 comes in at 12 ohms at 98 decibels at 1 kilohertz per milliwatt. So on paper, is pretty efficient. But in reality, actually, it's one of the few IEMs that I have reviewed. I think it does scale at least a bit. Honestly, it's similar in Khan to that regard. I think it would just scale even a bit better than Khan, which maybe is also because the drivers here are generally way better than Khan had. So overall, I think if you up the power, in my instance here, this is the SMSL SP200 plus SU8. So it's pretty damn powerful. It sounded a bit better than the up 5 or BTR5 did to my ears. I generally think the actually bass gets a bit thicker in quotes and it separates a bit better and the staging gets a bit improved. But again, it's not a lot. So in percentage, I noted about 80% or so what this is capable of you should get on random dongle. At least my laptop did absolutely fine. But if you up the power a bit more, honestly a bit more than up 5 would be probably my preferred choice here. You get everything that this can, like upping it to SMSL SP200, what I have here, which is, I don't know how many watts it has. It's overkill. Like we really have to play at the lowest volume settings to get this, like, to not be too loud. But it does get a bit improved in terms of sound quality. And then let's come to the star of the show. Let's talk about sound and, as usual, general sound characteristics. Again, as usual as well, I've thrown the measurements here done with IEC 711 coupler, normalized at 1 kilohertz, at 77 decibels. So, yep, as you can see, I compare it to Khan directly because, yes, it is pretty similar because it's in U shape with a strictly sub bass with just an ever so slight hint of mid bass boost. So yeah, we just will look at this in detail now. Starting off with treble, yep, extension-wise, this does definitively do better than Khan. I said in my review for Khan, I didn't really have much like trailing ends of tones, or like upper treble was kind of like not really there. I think the E20 does do better in this regard. There's a decent amount of, like, at least decent, like some air for this price, absolutely acceptable. And you do get some better trailing ends and better leading edges in this regard. So it's absolutely fine at this price point, and I don't really have complaints. And yeah, speaking of Khan, it has a peak as well at around 9 kHz on the graph. This one here is a bit more pronounced, and generally, like, this whole thing comes off as more treble forward than Khan. But again, let me note, because this is my ear that does resolve it also at 9K as well as the coupler, your knowledge will vary, because depending on how deep you insert it, depending on the shape of your canal, this can shift to 8K, and that would make it pretty damn uncomfortable. For me though, it was 9K, and it totally worked fine with most of my tracks, like Metallica worked fine, Linkin Park, Ovan, Nightcrawler, nothing more. Like even more aggressive things that usually come off as like sibilant or like e-guitars that could be too spicy, were just absolutely fine. I didn't have any problems here. Yeah, I noted generally well defined, but bright is what came to my mind when listening to this. Especially because the bass shelf here is so sub-bass focused, generally bright sounding IEM, but with good bright. Not like the Ting T2 Plus, which was not good at all. This one definitively is much more reasonable bright here. So yes, then let's go to mid-treble and kind of lower treble region. And I think this is the biggest problem with the E20 in my opinion. It is pretty forward in this region, which I have heard people not liking. So like 5K-ish is pretty forward, and I'm not sensitive to 5K, mind you, but there is a noticeable glare to me in this region. I'm really not sensitive to this, but I don't know why, like mid-treble and 5K-ish comes off as a bit of glare to me. I'm not entirely sure why, because really other IEMs had way more 5K than this, and that didn't feel like it. But this one does. And yeah, the pinna gain here is also definitively more than what would be neutral. So it comes off as pretty bright. And if you don't like that, I think this will not be for you, because it's generally a more bright sounding IEM in the treble. But again, compared to Khan, as you see, it's more bright, and yeah, won't work for everybody. But at least what we did right here is the treble peak is at 3K, so that absolutely is okay. And to my taste, again, just personal preference, I think this is absolutely fine in the treble. Like, it's more bright but not uncomfortable, so, and I did like it. Even lower treble department here. And yeah, upper mids, same story. Good balance, natural, a bit forward, so yeah, very clear as well, but not bad at all, and generally worked well for most songs or soundtracks. Again, the Cyberpunk soundtrack, the outro song here, Never Fade Away, vocalist, very clear here, nicely audible, a bit thin, some would argue, but for me, the clarity that you get as counter for the thinness is okay. I prefer clarity over body. But this one still strikes a good balance here, so you still get clarity and body, not either, but both. So overall, absolutely fine. And then, yeah, look at the graph, ladies and gentlemen, look at it. The mids, like, yeah, these are good. Like, there's nothing I can say negative about the mids here. Maybe they are slightly underpronounced. If you just look at the graph, you would expect the mids to be more, like, more pristine, more clear. So they are a bit underpronounced there, especially in the vocal department. I noted in Blue and Gold from Nothing More was a bit underpronounced. Like, I have heard IEMs that are more V-shaped that had better vocals than this, but it is very clear and very clean, and yeah, there isn't much to complain here. As I said, like, if you just look at the graph, it doesn't tell the whole story, especially in this case here. A bit underpronounced, a bit not dull, but like a bit, yeah. But still well enough. Like, this is never lost in the mix or so. So yeah, generally just work fine. And then we go to lower mids, and yeah, there ain't no lower mids. Like, if you like your lower mids to be warm, this is not for you, not your cup of tea. But this is exactly my thing. And because good part of my library is like more fusion jazz inspired, that is generally better mixed. it is working absolutely like a charm. Like the bass guitars still come off as well defined without any problems. But again, if you listen to more like older rock, and I have ordered or have gotten myself the Queen, I think best of, I don't know, whatever, was cheap. And I'm not the greatest Queen fan, I have to be honest, but just to have it because it's classics, I was like, okay. And yeah, and this, I think you want a bit more lower mids, but generally it's not bad at all. It's not thin like Variations would be. It's just, you know, it's there. And then we come to bass. And besides the glare and the treble and the bit brightness, I think this is the most decisive aspect of the E20, because this bass shelf is below 150 Hertz. Not 200, but would be most IEMs do, or 300, but for instance the Quintet did 150 Hertz. So that means most of the bass is actually sub-bass forward, and if you have a good kick drum or mid bass hits in like synth tracks, they will come off as thin, like absolutely they will. And again, if you are like me and you just don't mind that because you have the nice sub-bass shelf here, yeah, this can be for you. And I generally think the bass quality of the Beryllium driver, which we have not tackled, the drivers here are quick interception. Yeah, we get two dynamic drivers. One of it is Beryllium coated for the bass, absolutely working well, coming off still as somewhat punchy. While being a bit thin, as I said, because yeah, that's how the tuning is. And the other driver is a diamond like carbon, which also comes off as nicely detailed. And yeah, like generally these drivers are good in here, like definitively step up from Khan in almost every aspect what I can think of. And this also means the bass is well controlled, it's tight, it is fast, so you shouldn't have any problems in most tracks. And personally though, I have to say the sub-bass quality could be better. But again, for this price, like, this is not a complaint. In Interstellar's Mountains, so my benchmark track here, there's a deep bass note at like 2 minutes 10 to 16. It reaches kind of 2 minutes 15, but with texture until 2 minutes 14. That is okay. That's like average, like maybe tiny bit better, but it's not great at all. So this is a bit disappointing if you see the graph, but if you listen to it in person, like, this is still good quality, especially at this price. And again, like, this is just nitpicking what I do here, because overall, absolutely fine. And then we come to the other technicalities, and as I said, so far the drivers were good, and it continues coming on in the good way here. Soundstage, layering, and imaging. Well, what should I say? This thing has a good stage. It is definitively above average. I would describe it as actually good. It has horizontal width, it has height, it has depth. It's all there. And usually you even get more than 3 layers. So at this price point, again, color me impressed. Like, this is pretty damn good. And then I think on top that the imaging is spot on. Like, really playing BattleBit, playing Insurgency, or whatever else I could think of. The imaging is really spot on and just allows gaming very well without you getting getting used to the way this is imaging. It just images so naturally and so well. Absolutely nicely done. And in this aspect, again, like, it's very performant. And if you would ask me how much this cost, in my mind it would be more $200, because it, like, the imaging, soundstage, and layering, so nicely done. And then separation, dynamics, and coherence. Yeah, again, as I said, in terms of timbre, there's glare at 5K, and I can't get over this glare somehow. In most of my library that I threw on here that is not super smooth, I do get this glare, and this is, I think, the worst part of this IEM for me personally. So if you have problems with 5K and you know you are sensitive to like this glare region, won't be for you. And yeah, this is also affecting how overall like string instruments sound, right? But it is not the worst. Like, I can really see people having a really good time with this. I mean, I have a very good time, right? I just like nitpick here in the details. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt here. But yeah, separation itself is also nicely done. Like, usually instrument lines are well separated, vocals are separated, and again, it's not as good as for Quintet would be. That's also not like expected, because Quintet doesn't separate mid driver, but it is still pretty damn impressive for this price point. And dynamics, yeah, I also think macro dynamics is pretty damn well done, and micro dynamics, well enough. Like, fares a bit behind, but again, we're talking about $50, pretty damn good overall. So yeah, also in this technical department, I say, yeah, this is pretty impressive. And that brings me to a verdict. And in the $50 or rough $50 price bracket, right, this is pretty crowded at the moment. There's a lot of IEMs that are pretty damn good. And this one is directly competing with Khan and other IEMs that go for the strict U shape. And I think, with Zero as well, if I remember correctly, this is absolutely impressive there. It does deliver in what it wants to do, like a bit more bright U-shaped IEM. Light glare on top, as I said already a couple times, but the bass shelf is nice, the drivers are technical, imaging is nice, soundstage as well, dynamic separation, like everything that I could think of what would be important in an IEM is fulfilled here. And this is again one of those things where Criticus has redefined the price bracket. Yeah, in my opinion, this is redefining the €50 price bracket, because you get tuning, a bit more on the bright side, with a bit of glare, yes, but you get technicalities in every aspect, and with some EQ, I think you could also bring the bass up to a level that is more akin to the Khan, which generally has the more agreeable bass signature. So overall, for the E20 here, I will recommend these. If you are okay with a more bright U-shaped signature, with 150 below bass boost, yeah, this is a good IEM, and yeah, I don't have too many big complaints here. So yeah, that's it. If you have questions, if you have criticisms, if you have other IEMs, like maybe some of those secret tips, like, yeah, keep them coming. I will read all of your comments and reply, and yeah, thank you for your time, and yeah, with this, John Spector.